Utility tariffs to go up on May 3, 14.75% for electricity and 4.02% for water. Well, the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, they announced a fresh round of utility tariffs increase, raising electricity prices by 14.75% and water tariffs by 4.02%. The new rates, which affect all categories of consumers, will take effect from May 3, 2025. Well, according to a statement from the PRC, these adjustments, they are in line with their quarterly tariff review mechanism, and that evaluates prevailing economic conditions and their impact on utility pricing. According to the PRC, a total payment of the outstanding revenues from previous quarters would have resulted in much higher increase in both electricity and water tariffs. The Commission, being mindful of the current economic difficulties for Ghanaians, decided to recoup only half of the outstanding debts. It continues to say that this has always been the careful balancing act the Commission has had to do to minimize the impact of tariff increases on livelihoods, while ensuring that utilities are well capitalized to keep the lights on. The latest hike adds to a long-standing trend of rising electricity costs in Ghana. Now, over the last 16 years, electricity tariffs have surged by over 352%. It is placing a growing financial burden on households and businesses across the country. These increases have had a significant impact on the cost of living, while also making local manufacturing less competitive due to the high operational expenses. This morning, we're breaking the increase down for you. We have experts lined up. We'll be getting in touch with them right away to begin the conversation on the impact of these increases. How have we arrived at this point? And what should consumers expect going forward, effective May 3? We're speaking with the Executive Director of the Institute for Energy Security and NMWC. We also have Director of Research and Corporate Affairs at the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission. Dr. Eric Obute will also be joining us. And then the Chairman of the Trade Union Congress, Bernard Owusu, will also join us this morning as we talk about the impact of electricity and water tariff adjustments. Well, the PRC, they are citing economic pressures and sector viability as one of the reasons for doing this. So in justifying the latest increase, the PRC cited several economic variables as key drivers. They say that depreciation of the cedi against the US dollar, prevailing inflation rates, the changing mix of electricity generation, and the rising cost of natural gas, they remain the primary fuel for power production. The Commission explained that these adjustments are designed to maintain a balance, ensuring that utility companies do not either over-recover or they do not under-recover their revenue. It further indicated that the highs could have been higher if the PURC aimed to fully recover deficits from previous quarters. So what the PRC is telling us is that they are being magnanimous in this case, because this 14.75% and the 4.02% for the tariffs, it could have been way higher if the Commission wanted to recover all the losses or all the deficit from previous quarters that the Commission reduced, what the expectations would have been. The review mechanism, it said, is based on transparent rate-setting guidelines to reflect changing economic conditions. Also, in the statement of the PRC expressed concern about the deteriorating financial health of utility providers, warning that under-recovery of revenue was causing serious bleeding in the sector. It says without timely tariff adjustment, it cautioned the long-term viability of power and water service providers would be at risk. So if the PRC or the utility service providers, if they do not increase the tariffs going forward, the long-term viability of power and water service providers, it would be at great risk. However, these explanations, they are unlikely to pacify the public. You know that we are already under pressure from rising prices and challenging economic environment. Consumer groups and business leaders, they are expected to push back against the increase. And of course, they will cite affordability concerns and inefficiencies in the utility sector. This morning we heard from a lady in Kaswa talking about how the service is unavailable, although she's being charged. At the heart of the sector challenges lies the Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG. It has been criticized and been in critical condition for chronic inefficiencies and massive financial losses. The situation has been compounded by politically motivated contracts that have left the company vulnerable to unsustainable costs. In fact, one of the most damaging practices has been the signing of take-or-pay agreements, which obligate ECG to pay independent power producers even for unused electricity. Now, over the last 8 years, ECG has paid over 13 billion cedis in capacity charges alone, essentially for power that was never consumed. Now, these contracts often negotiated under political pressure. They were signed in United States dollars. Well, as the cedi depreciates as well, the cost of honoring these obligations escalates dramatically, further straining ECG's finances. Moreover, many of the power plants involved in these contracts produce electricity at significantly higher cost than those in neighboring West African countries. See, we're still staying with the matters of ECG because beyond contracts, ECG's financial troubles, they have been exacerbated over time by poor procurement practices. There's a claim that politicians and the associates have turned the company into a cash cow, forcing ECG to procure materials not needed at the time of procurement. You remember the cables matter? Yeah. This has bloated costs and undermined the company's ability to invest in essential infrastructure upgrades and customer service improvements. Currently, the whole country is baffled at how over 1,000 out of close to 3,000 containers of ECG materials imported through Tema Port are said to be missing. In fact, what even breaks the heart of Ghanaians more is how some of the containers and materials have been found at obscure places across the country. And in some instances, the materials have been melted into products for exports. Well, the announcement of the new tariff hikes is likely to ignite public outcry. Unlikely so, public outcry have begun coming. Well, let's have a conversation on the back of this, and speak with Dr. Eric Obute. He is the Director of Research and Corporate Affairs at the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission. Dr. Obute, thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning, and thanks for having me on the show.
Nice. Let's get right into it. Dr. Obute, since the announcement has come, maybe from your end, what are you gaining from the public? What have been the public reaction so far?
Well, thank you very much. The public reaction has been one of, when we take a look at the tariffs again, the tariffs are a little on the high. But upon explanation, I think the public is gradually understanding where the commission is coming from.
So we understand that the commission is telling us this 14.75% and the 4.02% is, in fact, the commission being magnanimous with us. Explain that, please.
Well, that is true. The tariffs could have been higher than this, but in the wisdom of the commissioners, they decided, look, let's play down because economic conditions are not too good and consumers are suffering. Everybody is suffering and feeling the pinch. So instead of, let's say, paying upfront the entire debt of 976 million cedis, which has been accumulated from previous quarters, let's take 50% of that and add it to whatever it is we have in this particular quarter. If we take this quarter alone, the tariff should have gone up by 6%. But because of the arrears that we have added to it, 50% of that, the tariffs have shot up to about 14.75%. If we were to push through all the 976 million cedis outstanding debt, the tariffs would have been in the region of 24%. But the commissioners deemed it fit that, no, we cannot do that. Let's just take half of the debt and then spread the rest over the coming quarters in the year.
But this is also as a result of the country's position with the International Monetary Fund, is it not?
What the commission does has got nothing to do with the IMF. The commission was doing these minor tariff reviews before the IMF came in. So we cannot attribute it to the IMF. If whatever we are doing coincides with whatever IMF is doing, that is a different thing altogether. But it has got nothing to do with the IMF at all.
Were we not supposed to, if you like, have quarterly reviews as part of the, well, and the reviews, of course, would be on the increasing side as part of the International Monetary Fund conditionalities for Ghana?
The quarterly reviews are not only increments. There could be a reduction, or maybe the tariffs will just be where they are. And we are doing this, as I said previously, we were doing these quarterly reviews long before IMF came into the equation. So we cannot attribute whatever we are doing now to that of the IMF. It's not a conditionality. We are only doing this to make sure that we retain the real value of the tariffs that we put in place.
You mentioned that if you were to go with the original increment plan, then we'll be doing well over 20%. So now that we're doing 14.75, it means in the next quarter we're likely to carry it forward.
Yeah, we are carrying forward the extra 50%. So it all depends on four primary factors: the direction in which they go. If, let's say, the exchange rate now we are using 15 cedis, 69 pesos to the dollar. If the next quarter we are going to do it and then the exchange rate is in the region of 13 cedis, 14 cedis, it impacts positively on the tariff. However, if the exchange rate shoots beyond what we have now, then there's going to be an under recovery, which the consumers will have to pay for because there will be a gap which has to be closed. And that is what adds up to the debt that we have.
Right, Dr. Obuta, it brings me to the question on, the PRC citing economic pressures and sector viability as the reasons why this has gone up. So there's a mention of the depreciation of the cedi against the dollar. There's a mention of also prevailing inflation rates, and then the changing mix of electricity generation sources, as well as the rising cost of natural gas. That remains the primary fuel for power production. If you can explain to us how these variables impact, educators, how they impact the increase over the years.
Okay, I just explained that of the exchange rate. That if the exchange rate we are using today is 15.69 cedis to the dollar, if the next tariff window we get an exchange rate of, let's say, 12 cedis, 13 cedis to the dollar, 14 cedis to the dollar, then we call something over recovery, and that will impact positively on the tariff. That means that the tariff will have to dip. The tariffs will go down, okay? Because whatever it is that the utility service providers have now, we have to work it back into the tariff, and it comes down to a reduction in the tariffs for consumers. However, if the tariff if the exchange rate depreciates against the dollar, then it will impact negatively on the tariffs. If we take, for instance, the inflation we used the last time was in the region of 22.27%. This time round, inflation has moved up marginally to 22.49%. So that will also impact a little or slightly negative on the tariffs. If we take the generation mix between thermal and hydro, the last time we used 35% from hydro and 65% from thermal. This time around, we are using 28.8% from hydro and 71.2% from thermal. It also has effect on the tariffs. If we take the fuel, which is natural gas, the weighted average cost of gas, it also has its impact on the tariff. So depending on the direction in which these factors move, it will either impact the tariff negatively or positively.
I see. For those of us who are expecting the 14.75% and the 4.02%, first of all, I understand that this is affecting all categories of consumers. What categories are there, and general education, and who is expected to pay this?
Well, there are different categories in the customer classes.
Mm-hmm.
We do have, if it comes to electricity, we do have the lifeliners. And the lifeliners are people who consume electricity from 0 to 30 kilowatt hours. We do have the residential class. And in the residential class, there are different categories. There are people who consume electricity up to 300 kilowatt hours. There are people who consume electricity up to 600, and people who consume electricity beyond 600. And then we have the non-residential class. And for the non-residential class, we do have people in that category, let's say barbers, tailors, seamstress, those type of people are in the non-residential class. Then we do have the special load tariff, low voltage, medium voltage, and the high voltage. And then we have the class for steel, the steel companies. So those are the various categories that we have. And we do have, in the case of water, we have residential customers, commercial customers, and the rest. If we take the electricity side, for the lifeliners who consume between 0 and 30 kilowatt hours, for now, they are paying 67 pesos per kilowatt hour. Kilowatt hour is just the unit of measurement of electricity that you consume. So they are paying 67 pesos per kilowatt hour. Now, from May 3rd, or let's say May ending, if you are on a postpaid meter, you'll be paying 77 pesos per kilowatt hour. Okay? So that's what it is in the residential class. If we take the case of the other residential classes, there are people who consume between 0 and 300 kilowatt hours. Right now, they are paying 1 cedi 53 pesos for every kilowatt hour. From the end of May, you pay 1 cedi 75 pesos per kilowatt hour. So it is across board, irrespective of the category you find yourself in. You pay 14.75% on your consumption. Same goes for water. In the case of water, bear in mind that every 1,000 liters of water or 1 cubic meter of water, we are paying 5 cedis as of now. And a cubic meter of water, which is 1,000 liters, amounts to 220 gallons of water. So for 220 gallons of water, GWL charges you 5 cedis. From the end of May, GWCL will give you 5 cedis 98 pesos for consuming 220 gallons of water. That means that 98 pesos has been added to your 5 cedis that you consume now. That's what it is.
So, some very nice explanation there. But Mr. Obute, if you can, I'm reading a message here, and the person says, explain to us how much I need to add if on the normal I buy 300 cedis worth of electricity at the end of the month. So if the person buys 300 cedis worth of electricity at the end of the month until, May 3, what should this person expect? How should the person calculate the 14.75% for electricity and the 4.02% for water?
Okay, if we take the 14.75, percentage-wise, do 1.1475 times 300. And that should be able to give you approximately what you should pay, because there's a service charge of 2 cedis 13 pesos which will be added to it. The service charge is standard. That's fixed. So which is 2 cedis 13 pesos which will be added to it. Yeah. But if you buy, let's say, 50 cedis of power, what you add to it will be like 8 cedis. That's what you add to it.
Mr. Obute, before I let you go this morning, you've also spoken about, the PRC finding a nice balance between, the current economic pressures as well as the need for the sector to also survive. Now, we also understand that this is not what the PRC would have gone for originally, but there are a lot of reasons why it chose these numbers, or the commission arrived at these two numbers. My question is, are these two numbers enough to provide some form of stability for the sectors we're talking about here?
Well, for the quarter that we are talking of, yes, it will provide some relief, but not everything. As I told you, there's a backlog, or there's an arrears which is being carried forward. So yes, this will give them some relief, but not everything.
I see. Mr. Obute, thank you. If there's anything else, we'll certainly get back to you, but we appreciate your time with us this morning, sir.
My pleasure.
Research and Corporate Affairs at the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, speaking with us there, explaining what went into the decision to arrive at the 14.75% for electricity and the 4.02% for water. Well, if you didn't know, now you know. So in fact, the PRC, they say that they are being charitable, because we should have expected some over 20% increase. And they've given the reasons why they are increasing it. They cited several economic variables as key drivers. For instance, the depreciation of the cedi against the dollar. There's also the mention of prevailing inflation rates, the changing mix of electricity generation sources, and the rising cost of natural gas, which remains the primary fuel for power production. That was Dr. Eric Obute. Let's now crossover and speak with Nana Mwesi. He is the Executive Director of the Institute of Energy Security, also a key stakeholder in this discussion. Nana, thank you so much for making time for us this morning. We appreciate your time. Since the PURC made the announcement that effective May 3, we should expect some 14.75% increase in electricity tariff and 4.02% for water, the public, they're not so happy because, Charlie, Nana, money no day. Is it a fair reaction of the population to this?
Noble, thanks for having me. Good morning to your listeners. Of course, as a consumer myself, I am not at rest for this increment of almost 15% in terms of the tariff. There's not been an increase in my wages and salary. There's not been any improvement in my economic life yet. I have to be paying more for utilities every now and then, and that reduces my disposable income. How much will be left for me to take care of, for Noble to take care of the other necessary, source? So, an upward adjustment in tariffs, definitely will bring some discomfort to consumers. And so they are right. They are right if they want to express their frustration and disappointment. It is fair to do that because they bear the brunt of all this. That's to start with. I'm also a consumer.
But Anna, how did we arrive here? What has been the journey like? How did we arrive at this quarterly increase?
Of course, we all know and we have accepted that we'll do a quarterly review of tariffs so that we ensure it reflects economic variables, and also ensure that we have full cost recovery for the utilities. If they cannot recover all their costs, then we are of course compounding debt, and we are putting them in a position where they cannot perform as expected and give us that needed reliable power supply. And so, yes, for every quarter there must be a review, and in some quarters, there are basically four key variables that are used: the exchange rate movement, inflation trend, the weighted average cost of gas, and also the electricity generation mix. The electricity generation mix includes two key sources: the hydro and the thermal. Noble, you know the hydro is cheaper to produce electricity from compared to the thermal that uses natural gas and to some extent liquid fuels, which are expensive. And so if we do more of hydro, then we are reducing the weighted average cost of production of this power. If we do more of natural gas compared to hydro, then we are definitely going on higher ground. Again, if inflation is stabilized, we may have some stability as well in the tariff. If it begins to misbehave, of course, it will impact on the price negatively for consumers. Then again, the exchange rates, the utilities will have to procure their parts and their equipment and inputs in dollar terms. They have to be sold in cedi, and so there's always that forex exposure which must be accounted for. There have been some months that we've seen a marginal reduction in price of electricity because the variables were both well for consumers. That is it. For this quarter, yes, we saw a decline in the price of gas, which is good. We also saw some semblance of stability in inflation and the foreign exchange. However, we just saw that this time around compared to the last quarter, meaning that it's negative for consumers. But putting all together, they wouldn't have raised the steep price to even beyond 5%. But you realize that this time around, the PRC introduced a fifth factor, another factor, and that is under recoveries. What we learned and we saw that in 2024 last quarter, quarter four, PRC should have adjusted price of electricity upward by roughly 12%, but they did only 3%. And we understood government was going to go in election, and so it was careful and definitely will have to interfere in the work of PRC. And so that 9% that was not covered, and it was waiting for us. Also, in the first quarter of this year, we get an indication that because the PRC didn't have a board, they could not do the first quarter adjustment, which also would have come with some minimal adjustment in price upwards. And so those under recoveries for the last quarter and the first quarter of this year, last quarter 2024 and the first quarter of this year, it's what we are paying for. To the extent that the PRC is telling us that we are only paying 50% of this under recoveries. That's why we are paying just 14%. Had they slapped the full cost recovery, we'll be paying more than that. and they are trying to balance the need of the utilities and the financial, distress with consumer burden. That's why they slapped only 50% of that. Noble, it should tell you that come next quarter, the additional 50% that's outstanding may be slapped in full. And so price of the city will still go up in the next quarter, even if all the four key variables are stabilized. That is where we stand today. And it can bring some sort of discomfort to a consumer.
Bearing in mind the explanation you have just offered to us, what do you think? Would it have been advisable for the PRC to go full out this time so that they clear all the under recovery areas to cross out all those deficiencies from previous months back, so that, if you like, we begin on a fresh slate in the next quarter?
No, that would have exacerbated our challenge for this quarter as consumers. And so they've talked right and managing this situation. And even the 50% left, I as a consumer will ask that come the next quarter, it must not be fully applied. They should still cushion the consumer because it's not easy. There are two things here. If we delay in recovering this, I admit as the energy think tank that it will impact on the operations of the utilities and may affect negatively power supply. How that it gives also the room for people to fulfill power and also the payment of their bill, which also presents itself as a squeeze of cash flow to the same utilities. So there must be a balance, a compromise here, so that at least there is cushion at both ends, both for the utilities and for the consumer.
Now, I see. Now, going forward, there's the bit also about the customer paying for these increases and the quality of service that is being delivered. How do we marry the two? That since now I'm expected to pay 14.75% increase in electricity, and then 4.02 for water, it means I should see or experience some improvement in the service delivery.
Of course, if we must pay tariff that is full, it's reflective of production of power and supply. Then, of course, the consumer will expect some form of reliable power supply, because I'm paying fully for every cost that is incurred in the process. However, remember that the UCG today, being the major distributor, already is incurring almost 30% of losses due to technical or commercial reasons. Definitely, they will not be able to generate even though able to generate enough revenue to ensure that the other players in the stream, be the IPPs, the VRA, the grid code, the water code, the fuel supplier, and the ECG itself are also, resourced financially, and they receive a fair share of the revenue. To the extent that they cannot perform to that high level of expectation. We also see complete waste in the ECG system. And I know you remember recently the ECG, it's reported of loss of missing containers and all that. It becomes a financial burden on the sector. It's also, if we are not able to receive this part on time, it means that it delays the improvement and the investment and the upgrade in the grid. And if you delay the maintenance or upgrade exercise, what you are doing is you are accommodating losses, technical losses, because aging infrastructures loses more power than improved infrastructures. And so, yes, Noble, to your question briefly, if we are paying cost-reflective tariffs, then we must have reliable supply. But we are not having because of the inefficiencies and the waste, in particularly the ECG.
Particularly for the ECG, certainly, but Ghana Water as well. There are instances where you see, you're driving in town, you're walking about, you see a pipe burst somewhere, water will be flowing for days. The place will be, getting soaked and all of that. And you're hoping that Ghana Water will come and pay attention to it, because that is also a typical example of waste. The quality of water that we're getting, bearing in mind the impact of Galamsey and all of that. For the Ghana Water themselves too, 4.02%. I mean, although it is low compared to that of the electricity, but it is still an increase, and we still expect increase or proper quality service delivered to us.
Exactly, Noble. So we are also contributing to these increases, as you have put up clearly. You get part of the consumers, or some people among us, stealing power. We have some watching carelessly, water seeping. We have some contributing to the pollution of water, which forces the Ghana Water Company to spend more in treating the water. If they spend more, that excess expenditure must be passed on to the consumer. Other than that, tomorrow there will not be Ghana Water. Tomorrow there will not be water. Tomorrow there will not be that reliable supply of electricity. And so our attitude as consumers must also change. We must be protective of the system. We must be accountable. We can save ourselves from some of these increases as consumers.
And now, talking about the attitude of consumers, and maybe this will be my final inquiry from you, my final question from you. Now, while we complain or we cry over the 14.75% increase for electricity and the 4.02% increase in water, how do we, if you like, reduce the impact it will have on us from your perspective as the Executive Director of the Institute for Energy Security?
How do we reduce what? I lost you there, forgive me.
So what I'm asking is, how do consumers reduce the impact that this increment will have on their pockets? Maybe they should look for sustainable ways of using water, using electricity and all of that.
Definitely we must conserve this commodity. We must try to conserve water. If we find a leakage, we must report it in time. If we can even attempt to solve it, if it's not a major leakage, let us do, because we will pay for it. We must conserve water. If we have to wash or clean, we must bundle them together at a point in time than to be doing it bits and pieces. If we have to iron, for instance, we must iron in the iron on and pressing one, coming back in the afternoon and press one shirt. You see, most of these commodities, particularly electricity, it is the starting current that will hit the filament that draws more. It's not when you are pressing. And so we must try to do that. If we are going separate out, we must ensure that the necessary lights are off, except for probably security lights. If we know we won't come back on time, we must also close our fridges, right, and all that. Some form of energy conservation is very important so as to reduce our bills. Very important.
Then MWC, thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks for having me this morning, Noble.
We'll be speaking with Nana MWC. He is the Executive Director of the Institute of Energy Security there. Well, a group of people that will also have to bear the brunt of this increment. Let's speak with Bernard Owusu, who is the chairman of the Trade Union Congress. And already consumer groups and business leaders, they are pushing back against the increases, and they are citing affordability concerns and inefficiencies in the utility sector. This announcement has ignited public outcry, no doubt. Many Ghanaians were already struggling with high food prices. We are struggling with rent, transportation. Businesses, particularly small and medium enterprises, they are also concerned about the increased cost of doing business. And they transferring the cost to the consumer as well. Bernard also is joining us, chairman of the Trade Union Congress. Mr. Also, thank you for making time for us this morning. What has been your reaction so far since the PRC came out with this announcement? 14% increase in electricity, 4% increase in water, effective May 3.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for your cherished listeners and viewers. We think the government or the PRC should have maybe increases in 10% or below 10%, because we'll agree that what we're giving as labor, we went to the negotiation table, we're giving 10%. So something below 10% would have helped, if you ask me.
So you were expecting 10% or below 10% because of what Labour was able to negotiate for when they met the finance minister and President Mahama?
Yes, because we're told that things are difficult and we should hold on to this whilst we go into our next negotiation. But now that these things are coming up, we feel that, first of all, there is a lot of inefficiency in our electricity, water management. And we feel that the PURC should do more in their regulatory, mandate than the annual or the quarterly increases that we are receiving from them. We think that if they do more, the price of electricity can come down without necessarily increasing the prices as if done.
Listening to the PRC, they're giving reasons, or they're citing reasons for the increase. Now, economic pressures and sector viabilities, variables such as the depreciation of the cedi against the dollar, prevailing inflation rates, the changing mix of electricity generation sources, and the rising cost of natural gas, and that remains the primary fuel for power production. Now, there's also the bit about, the need to ensure a balance or maintain a balance, ensuring that these utility companies, they do not over-recover or under-recover. According to the PRC, I don't want to call it a debt, but it looks like there is some kind of under-recovering that happened before 2025. And so there's a need to, have a fine balance. Does that explanation not sit well with you?
No, please, respectfully. There will always be a justification for an increase. But we are told that there are a lot of people in Ghana who are doing illegal connections, who are not paying tariffs for both electricity and water. We know that walking in our street, we see pipes burst all over the place. There is a lot of wastage in our system. So if all these things are taken care of, I don't think that with this, increases that the PRC is asking for would be necessary. So for us, let us pinch ourselves and look within the value chain and ensure that we regulate the sector very well for us to have efficiency. Once there is efficiency, we'll have a lot of excesses that can take care of Ghanaians, not necessarily all the time increasing electricity and water.
For the Trade Union Congress, talk to us. How will this impact your business or your work?
Already, our take home don't even take us home. So increasing the electricity and water is bringing a lot of pressure already. We are already shortchanged at the point, and getting these increases has worsened our situation. The reason we are meeting our structures, and at the appropriate time, we'll come out as to the position that we will take as a group.
Zosu, thank you so much for your time with us.
Thank you for having me.
Bernard Owusu is the chairman of the Trade Union Congress, speaking with us there.